Unfortunately, there is not a lot going on in the world of third-party RF lenses at the moment. However, Yongnuo, who, if you remember, sent me their 85mm f1.8 lens not too long ago, did a review on that one. They just sent me a 35mm lens for the RF mount, which most of you guys will know 35mm is my favorite focal length on full frame. So they're on a little bit of a roll now because the 85mm that they made, I actually really liked it. I thought it was an amazing lens. So let's see if they make that a trend with this new lens. A quick disclaimer, Yongnuo aren't actually sponsoring this video. They just sent me the lens and they didn't make me pay for it, and they wanted me to give my honest thoughts on it on the channel for you guys. So as with everything that I put up on this channel, this is my unfiltered opinion. I ended up taking this lens out to test it out on a real world shoot. So I had Lian come out and Carlo film some behind the scenes. We took some really beautiful photos with this lens that I'm really happy with, and I'm going to be rolling those photos and some of the behind the scenes footage throughout this video. This is an autofocus lens and it is native to the RF mount. You don't need an adapter. It has a bright f2.0 maximum aperture and it comes in a really nice, lightweight and compact design. So right off the bat, I definitely can see that this lens would be a great option for street photography or travel photography just because it is so lightweight and inconspicuous. So the build quality of this lens, it feels really great. It's nice and solid. It's got a full metal construction. It's got a metal mount, as you can see. It's also got a weather sealing gasket around the mount there. So that's really great. It stops moisture from getting into the camera body and into the lens as well. Canon already have a 35mm 1.8 lens and it is quite small, as you can see. Nice and compact, fits in your bag really well. It's great to travel with. And then if you hold up the Yongnuo lens, it is probably around the same height, and it is a little bit thinner than the Canon version. So you can probably see there just a little bit thinner, and they're around about the same weight. I think the Yongnuo might be a little bit heavier just because it is a full metal construction. So definitely if size and weight matters to you, then this lens should be fairly interesting. So jumping into the image quality tests of this Yongnuo lens, it is actually really sharp. It definitely did surprise me. I didn't think it would be that sharp. But I think when you compare it to the level of sharpness of that 85mm lens that I just tried out, it just isn't quite on that same level. I put it side by side here with the Canon 35 1.8 RF, which is already an amazing performer wide open, and you can see that they are very similar. The Canon having a little bit more detail overall when you look at it 100%, and you can see the Yongnuo here is just a little bit softer wide open. As you stop down, the performance of both lenses gets a lot better, but I think the Canon has the slight advantage here. Talking about chromatic aberration now, this is those purple and green fringes that you sometimes see when you're shooting contrasty objects and into bright lights. The performance is pretty passable here, and it's kind of what you would expect for most lenses in this category, and it's something that you can fix up really quickly and easily in post. Also, I did notice when you're shooting wide open, objects that are slightly out of focus do have this kind of soft, glowy, diffused character to them, which isn't the case on the Canon 35mm. One area that I think the Yongnuo 35 is actually much better than the Canon 35 is in the bokeh. It looks a lot more smooth and a lot more pleasing to my eye than the Canon. You be the judge. I guess bokeh is very subjective, but I think it just looks a lot cleaner and a lot smoother. So talking about vignetting now, and this isn't a strong point of the Yongnuo lens. Vignetting performance isn't that great, especially wide open. When you do stop down, the vignetting gets a little bit more controlled. It is once again an easy fix in post, but Lightroom don't have a profile for the corrections, so you have to do it manually at this stage. The autofocus performance of this lens was pretty good actually. I was surprised at how fast and accurate it is. It's not quite as fast as the 85 that Yongnuo sent me or the 35 1.8 RF, but it's very quick, and I actually didn't miss any shots when I was testing this lens out. It pretty much nailed focus every single time, and no real complaints there. The face tracking worked really great. Single point worked great as well. One thing to note is that it can't focus super close. It's about 35 centimeters, I think, is its minimum focusing distance. And I did notice that when I was testing it out, just playing around with the lens when I first got it on my table here. But in a real world situation, I wouldn't really use a 35mm for anything super close up. However, I thought it was worth mentioning. I wanted to see how loud the lens is when it autofocuses, so I put it on my R6, and this lens is actually completely silent. I couldn't hear it autofocusing back and forth in video mode, which is actually really good. The last thing that you want is a really loud crunching autofocus noise, you know, while you're trying to shoot video, because it's very distracting. I did actually compare it to the Canon RF mount version, and that lens actually does make a little bit of noise. You can hear it. Not sure if a microphone would pick it up, but it definitely is there. As I mentioned before, build quality is really great. The focus ring turns really nice and smooth, and they even give you a lens hood in the box. The lens hood just stops stray light from coming in and causing flares in your photos. And also it does offer a little bit of protection. I mean, if you drop this, it's going to land on the lens hood first and not on that front element. And that's the last thing you want, is a broken front element. If you guys remember my review of the Yongnuo 85, you'll remember it has this cool little control ring feature, and it has a click to it as well, which is really cool. The 35 sadly does not have that feature. So if you wanted to buy these two lenses as a set and use them together, 35-85, they're actually really great complementary focal lengths. You'll just have to remember that you don't actually have this feature if you do like using it on the 35. So when you're switching between the lenses, you kind of have a different workflow with each body, which is kind of disruptive. I wish they did put the click and control ring feature into the 35, but maybe they just didn't have space for it. Also, just like the 85, it has a USB port for firmware updates, which I've already done before I use the lens, but just keep in mind that they only have update software for Windows. I have a Mac, so I actually had to find someone with a Windows computer to do the firmware update. All right, let's talk about price. The Yongnuo 35 F2 comes in at $375 US. And that makes it a very interesting option for RF mount users, especially being that it's over $100 less than the Canon 1.8. Now, it does lack some of the features that the Canon has, such as the macro capabilities, which I don't really think are that much of a selling point anyway, and the image stabilization. But if either of those features don't get you that excited and you don't mind losing a third stop of light on the maximum aperture, then the Yongnuo 35 might be a really great option for you. Overall, I think this lens is a really great option to someone who's getting into the world of prime lenses and they're on a bit of a tight budget, especially if you like the look of the 35mm focal length. Let me know what you guys thought of the images down in the comment section below. I'd be really keen to hear from you guys. If you did enjoy this one, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Really appreciate you guys sticking around, and I'll see you on the next one.